Live. It's the first time I ever did that. Yes? Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first virtual diversity committee meeting. For those who don't know, I'm Nora Johnson. I'm the co-chair, and I'm on the board, school board, and the other co-chair is Shirley Sapiro. Shirley, and she is the director of the ENL program here in the district. We also today are fortunate enough to have our superintendent, Dr. Michael Hines, here. Shirley and Dr. Wafa Westerfeld is here. I didn't know you were going to be able to make it. Hi, Wafa. Thank you for joining us. The diversity committee usually meets once a month, and we did not meet, though, during the pandemic. Shirley and I had actually discussed meeting several times before the recent events and the horrific murder of George Floyd and the resulting protests and the other events that have transpired. Once that happened, we just said, okay, now we need to meet, we need to discuss, and we need to talk about what we're doing as a district and catch up on our diversity committee meetings and what the diversity committee does, and also use this as a platform to discuss with the community that's here today what we are doing as a district going forward as a result. So I believe that everybody got Dr. Hines's letter, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hines to discuss and present what he expressed in the letter and the initiatives.
Sure. Thank you, Nora. So as we all know, well, first of all, thank you for everyone joining us, not only here in this meeting as part of the committee, but certainly those who are watching outside. Yeah, this is extremely timely as far as this meeting is concerned. I applaud the board in allowing a letter like that to go out, because I think there are some concerns in school districts that, how it may potentially land on people, and clearly this board, and rightfully so, taking the stance of, there's a lot of talk out there, but we really need to do, and that's the intent of the letter, is to talk about what actions can we take place that have to take place. And part of it, the way the letter was framed, I'll say there's three different parts. One is, from a policy perspective, what are some of the things that we need to revisit as far as policies that we have in place that may be that aren't the most up to date when it comes to, I would say, hiring practices, or some of the things that we do from a curriculum standpoint. I think it's critically important that we look at, from a curriculum standpoint, some things that we can bring in that are really new. And of course, I think one of the most important issues is, are we really reflective as a school district as far as who we have serving our students? Is it reflective of the community that we're serving? So proportionally speaking, and I think many Long Island school districts struggle with that. I don't think that's new, but I think we have to do a much better job at hiring candidates that are not only incredible, but certainly reflect the diversity that we have here. And we need to make that a high priority for sure. So again, it's always nice to show support for what we believe to be right. From a civil rights, human rights standpoint, it's another one, I think, as a school district to then take action. And then one of the things too is bringing in curriculum that really focuses on racism, systemic racism, and to really look at something comprehensive K through 12. So those are the things that we're looking to do over the next year, and hopefully, actually not hopefully, this will start as of today. So again, the timing of this committee meeting is serendipitous to the real work that we have ahead of us. So I'll turn.
I'd like to just add one thing, because a number of the initiatives, if I could use that word, that we discussed was a redoubling our efforts to hire teachers and administrators of color and to have a staff that is more reflective of our community, as Dr. Hines just said. Also curriculum, adding to the curriculum specific anti-racism programming. And but another item that we did discuss that has been discussed before is revising our code of conduct and focusing on restorative justice, because the statistics do show that students of color are more likely to get suspensions, and it's just a better way to, it's obviously a better way for everybody, but it's specifically very important now with us moving forward for greater equity and trying to make the school district more responsive to the needs of all community members, and I do mean every student in that sense. There have been, and I don't know if, oh yes, Dr. Cohn is on. I mean, as far as one of the questions that we had is, or that I had, I should say, is how has the district, I mean, there's different levels of response. You know, one level of response was Dr. Hines's letter, which, as he said, the board was, you know, it was very much in favor of. I mean, I see it as oral letter. You know, Dr. Hines speaks for all of us. Another part of it is, what are we doing in the immediate aftermath, you know, with the protests going on? Like, what are we doing? What are we teaching our children? And unfortunately, you know, we're also dealing with the pandemic, and we're also relying on distance learning, which has its own challenges that we're adjusting to. But I know that many of the teachers actually and administrators have already been doing some teaching and lessons, and I'd like to hear from Dr. Cohn, because I know we spoke just before the meeting about the things he's doing. Yeah, thanks.
Sure. So I'm seeing a lot of really wonderful things going on in the classrooms. Now, if we were in the school building, I'd be able to walk around the hallways and see what's going on. But I am seeing a lot of conversations going on through emails and a lot of sharing of resources. We have one teacher, a second grade teacher, who recorded 2 excellent read alouds for her second grade class, inviting parents and children and siblings to come together, listen to them read aloud, and then start conversations in the home. And then, of course, this teacher shared it with all the other teachers in the school building. And I'm seeing many, many resources going from teacher to teacher. At Manor Haven School, we did a focused study group using the book, Bullying, Encouraging Kindness, Read Alouds and Guided Conversation. And the first 2 units of study that the author Lester Lamanek talked about was, Unit 1 was, we have so much in common. And Unit 2 was, there are ways in which we are different, not less than others, not better than others, just different. And this book has suggested read alouds and teaching points. Many of our teachers are going back to these old favorite read alouds that they have been using in their classrooms, revisiting them and using them so that children can make connections. And I'm not saying there are very deep conversations going on right now in our Google Classrooms, but we're giving children information that if they hear something at home or if they have questions for parents, they are making connections to the good that's in the world so that they can have these conversations. There are also resources being shared amongst administrators to help parents. And I know I've had conversations with our guidance counselor. I know they're working on a newsletter which will have helpful information. So that's some of the positive things that I see going on. And it started immediately.
Thank you, Bonnie. Are there any other administrators or teachers here who have want to share what's been going on within their schools? I mean, I'm putting people on the spot, perhaps, but
I'd like to talk about ENL.
okay, thank you. Good.
That's okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming. One of the things that you may have heard of recently is culturally responsive education. You know, we're hearing that term a lot more. It's come down from NICED that we really need to practice culturally responsive education. And I can tell you that ENL, in the 35 or 36 years that I've been doing it, we do that on a daily basis. You know, we recognize children's cultural backgrounds. We have children from different races, different languages. You know, we have Black kids, Asian kids, white kids, Hispanic children. And within those cultures, we have to recognize and celebrate in the classroom where these children come from, and also how to appreciate the other backgrounds of the children that they interact with. You know, we have kids that have come from Guyana. We have children, we have a child this year who's coming from Haiti. Obviously, we have Japan, you know, Japanese kids, Chinese kids, Korean kids. We have kids from the Philippines, and including many of our Central American, South American, and also from Spain. So within that context, you know, we instruct on a daily basis, keeping the background of these kids in the forefront, because we want the children to feel comfortable and welcome in the classroom, in our schools. And I know that the principals and the central office administrators and the HSA and the parents are very supportive of this in many different ways, whether it's through the Ed Foundation, whether it's through the Hearts, bringing in, you know, different programs for whether it's cultural, whether it's for Black History Month, depending on that. We try to address culture in many different ways. So I just wanted to put that in for things that the district supports and what the ENL department in particular does with culturally responsive education. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I think Dr. Hines would like to speak.
So I'm saying this off the cuff, Nora, so I hope you don't mind. You know, previously, before I came to Port Washington, I had the pleasure of serving in some really diverse school districts, much more so than where we are here in Port. And it doesn't matter where they are. What I will say, and I think Nora brought up a really, really good point. From a discipline standpoint, I remember as a former AP in a middle school that proportionally speaking, an overrepresentation of minority males were usually on the receiving end of suspensions, disciplinary actions than their counterparts throughout the rest of the school. That's been a fact, I think, in many places throughout many of the schools. Again, not just on Long Island. I think that's probably nationwide, if not, you know, elsewhere. And that's critically important, is to recognize that. So because there are a lot of things that are institutional, that are concrete, that have been in place forever, and sometimes it's under our noses and we don't recognize them. The second thing is, and we're kind of talking about before, I had a principal, we meet every Monday and Friday with the principals, and we were talking about some of the literature that we have in the midst of our teachers, right? So what they read, and some of the storylines still to this day are about, you know, white people rescuing, you know, minority families, you know, like being the savior, coming in and saving the day. These are the things that we have to, I think, really start taking a laser-like focus on when we talk about really changing a lot of different things with different spokes on it. I think, like I said before, there are policy things that we can look at, or regulations that are there. I think there are the curricular things that we can look at. And then there are just the traditional biases and assumptions that we just have as the human condition. And I think if we look at all of those things systemically and humanistically, then I think I strike that. I know we can begin to see some change. And I will say, I've met with some families this year that had concerns about some of the things that our kids are reading, some of the things that are taking place, and what I'm trying to do to the best of my ability is to be as reflective as I can be, thinking about what we can do differently. Clearly, I cannot go back in the past, but one of the things we can do moving forward is really making this a priority, not because of what happened with Mr. Floyd, even though that is certainly part and parcel, just because it is the right thing to do. And I know that we, as a school district and as a community, we are going to do this the right way. This is not just a diversity committee concern or discussion. This is systemically a school district discussion and concern. And I know the board takes this very seriously, and I'm very thankful for that. Thank you.
Nora, you have to unmute.
I didn't know I muted myself. I forgot. Okay, I was asking whether Mrs. Javelin is on, who's the Weber principal. Okay, because I just wanted to mention a couple of things that Weber has done in the last 2 weeks. They have, this is through, of course, distance learning. They have always talked about equality and justice for all, but let me just get to the point. They're weaving those themes into the core extension and the OAS classes. Using Time for Kids article about the protests and a book called We Are the Change, which includes quotes from influential figures. The health department shared that they're working this summer to do a book list for racial injustice. The health teachers posted, it was Wednesday, I guess this past Wednesday, a lot of questions, emotions, conversations about matters that are bigger than ourselves, although we as health teachers that can't solve all the problems in the world right now, they're here for their students and they've made that known. And it goes on. Schreiber teachers have been speaking with their students about their fears and frustrations. And the list does go on. And this is, as I say, though, an immediate. I think the really important part, though, is, as Dr. Hines was just saying, it's what we're going to do moving forward. And it's not because of Mr. Floyd's horrible death, but it is because that is a kind of a wake-up call, I think, across the nation, and it's affected all of us so deeply. I don't know if anybody would like to speak at this point. I mean, it's a little, I'm not used to having a virtual diversity committee meeting, but usually we have people comment as we talk and then we move on to the next topic. Would anybody like to? Yes. Erin, please unmute yourself though. Hi, Erin.
Hi, how are you? I'm here with my husband. I had two questions. One is, has there been any conversation with the local police department? And are there any ideas about having them, once school is actually open, having them come in and talk to students? Because I imagine, as there is in our household, there's a little bit of fear now for children of color and the idea of police. I wanted to know if there had been any outreach on either end.
I
I can answer
Heinz
that.
can
Nora.
address that, yeah.
Yeah. Have we reached out specifically about the police coming in for next year? At this point, no. Are there plans to have multiple, I would say, agencies come in to speak with their kids? Absolutely. So we haven't contacted them yet, but at some point, certainly in the future, we are looking to have not just the police come in, but other organizations.
But
Okay. I think it would be beneficial. And my second comment really was about the curriculum. I'm glad that it was brought up at the meeting to take another look and re-examine curriculum, especially the novels and nonfiction and fiction that is being read by students on all levels. I'm sure you're aware of the idea of mirrors and windows. It's been talked about a lot over the past year. The idea that children should be able to read something that is a reflection or a mirror of themselves when they're reading something. And also the idea of window, that for children who are not from certain areas of the world or a different background, that it's a window into someone else's life and an appreciation for the way other people live. So I just wanted to bring that up, and I'm hoping that that is an idea that can be used moving forward, as well as maybe some extra training for faculty in all the schools on how to teach from a specific standpoint of, like teaching while white, and the idea of teaching to everybody in a classroom. So those are just my comments. Thanks.
thank you, Erin. Thank you. I mean, I know we've discussed your strong feelings about To Kill a Mockingbird. And I mean, I don't write the curriculum, but that is something we will be discussing. I know that's just one example, though. Would anybody else like to speak before we move on? Okay, Maravik, hi.
Hi, Nora.
Your hair got so long.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. You know, my son is no longer in the Port Washington School District, but the idea of diversity hiring has been going on for the longest time.
Yes.
And, it comes up time and time again. So my question is a couple of things. Number one is, what are you going to do differently to actually make that happen? And number two, because we know that usually there is an opening in the school district when somebody retires. No. Is there anybody going to be retiring? Is there any chance that this can happen in the incoming school year? What is your timeline on this?
Well, we actually do have a fairly large number of retirements. I believe right now there are
15
retirements, in part because of they were retirement age, people who chose. I'm not going to get into the reasons. That's not important at this moment. But if we are fortunate enough for the budget to pass and we're actually in a position of doing hiring, we do have a good number of positions, obviously, to fill. I can't personally speak to the hiring methods that we use, but I can turn it over to one of the educators and talk about, I don't know that, well, I'll turn it over to one of the educators.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. And I mean, clearly I've only been here a year, so understanding, historically what's happened in the past. I think it's important to know what's happened in the past, but I also think it's important to understand what the goal. So let's just say we have 15 educators who have retired. I think the question becomes, how do we showcase those openings, right? We can't just do it through, I think, our traditional methods. I think we'll have to probably, and I know it's expensive, but you go to the Times, right? You go to New York Times, then you can really throw a very large net out there. Clearly, there'll be a lot of teachers, I believe, in New York City who would be willing to come in a wonderful school district like Port Washington. There are diversity fairs that pop up. We have to be, to see what that looks like now in the day and age that we're in right now, even though it looks like it's starting to lessen a little bit. So that's always a good thing. And then, when the candidates come in, these are things that's incredibly important, that we look for what types of attributes are we looking for in an educator, whether it's administrator or whether it's a teacher. And the goal is, like I said before, and I think we're all in agreement here, is to make it much more representative of the community that we're serving. But it has to be, it's like anything else in life, right? If it's really a priority, then you really make that happen. And I really believe that is going to be a priority moving forward. So what's different? I think the way that we canvass and the way that we go out to the larger community to bring quality candidates in, to make sure they're diverse in nature, to look at diversity fairs, talk to our institutions of higher learning to see what candidates are available, whether it's SUNY, CUNY, this is around here, and to really make a full-blown effort to do that. And I'm very confident that we will be successful moving forward.
Thank you.
I wanted to address that also. I've had 3 teacher retirements this year, at the end of this 1920 school year. And obviously, because the majority of the population in the ENL department, I would say we're about 90% Spanish speaker. We are looking for and planning to hire fluent bilingual Spanish speakers. We are in the process at SUSA, and we did have 2 candidates that are fluent speakers. They are both native speakers, and we are looking for the other positions that have opened up. One in particular at Manor Haven, because Manor Haven has the largest, not only ENL population, but obviously overall, they have a larger Hispanic population. So I know these, this is the effort that we make. And when people say sometimes there aren't, for me personally, for ENL, sometimes the candidates don't have the appropriate certification, or I just don't get the applicants, as true as that is. So this time, it's on the postings. Dr. Mioli and I interviewed many, many candidates. As you know, I'm fluent in Spanish, so I always give a little test. We do a little interview test to make sure that the candidate can truly speak Spanish. And you'd be surprised how many people think they can speak Spanish, but they really can't. So we do try to have actually truly fluent speakers that can address the needs of not only the ENL students, but their parents. We like to have that also their own cultural background as an addition to the school and the community of Port Washington. So from that perspective, we do try to hire more diverse candidates. If you look at Dr. Westervelt, she's also, a diverse female individual in central office. So over the years, there have been efforts to, and even back to the time of Nick Sterling, there have been efforts to hire diverse candidates. So, they do move on, but the effort has been there.
Thank you, Shirley. I just want to clarify, it's not that we don't have a diverse staff. It's that we want to make a stronger effort to recruit more people. It's a question at some point, like who comes and who applies, but it's also how do we reach out? And because we are on a peninsula, we are somewhat isolated and as a community, and not everybody necessarily wants to apply to work here, but we want to go out and try to recruit more and find other ways of recruitment. But we do have diversity on our staff. Now, I don't want to give, the wrong impression to people that are not aware of that. It's a question of increasing the diversity. Anybody else? I guess if not, I don't.
Laura,
Yeah.
Hi, this is John Davis.
Oh, hi, John. How are you?
How are you, Nora? It's
Been
nice
a
to
long
see
time.
everyone.
Yeah.
I'm a ENL teacher at Manor Haven,
Yeah.
and I know that I'm working closely with Dr. Cohen and the rest of the staff to try to be proactive and think of ways best to deliver this very difficult topic to our students. The one thing that I just wanted to say was Port Washington, I think schools did the district did such a wonderful job getting the word out for distance learning. So if you visit our website, there is something that you can click on that brings both my colleagues and the Port Washington community. These are resources that we all can use. So I'm just hoping that maybe we can think about adding something to the website, perhaps, that tells exactly what we're doing in our classrooms. And you know, people, I think I'm at a loss. I think probably many people in the community are at a loss to really what to do and how to speak to their kids, and provide resources, be upfront about it. Just like you did with the distance learning. I think that might be a powerful way to include everyone. That's all I had to say. Nice seeing you.
Thank you, John.
Nora, this is Sherry. Can I say something?
Of course.
Yeah, hi guys. This is Sherry Khan, and for those of you who know me as my work name is Sherry and Rashid, I'm a parent of students at Schreiber, and I'm also a professor who teaches anti-racist pedagogy at Long Island University. So first of all, I want to thank the board and Dr. Haynes for the letter, because I think that was a very unapologetic, very strong, and a letter that already is creating the spaces that we want to implement in the school district. So thank you for that. It was courageous. It set the tone for what we are going to do and who we are. So having said that, I can't agree more with Dr. Haynes and Nora with you when you spoke about the issues of restorative justice, because revisiting policy, Dr. Haynes, that you had said, because I think it's important, and I am very committed to hiring more students of color and faculty of color, because in my 20 years here, that is one thing we've been trying to do in administration. But please understand, and you all know this, because I'm speaking to the choir here, is diverse teachers doesn't translate into diverse policies. Because you can have diverse teachers with the best intentions and the best ethos and pedagogies, but if the system at large doesn't let that happen and create those spaces, change doesn't really happen in a very restorative way. If you even look at our there's open data for our suspension rates, and we're pretty high up there. In terms of minority students, in terms of how many minority students we have, and the equivalent and the correlation to suspension rates. It's problematic, and that's an issue through K-12. So I have done professional development with the teachers and staff in the past, and I think I can't urge enough curricular change, as you mentioned, Dr. Hines, and also policy changes and revisiting policies. That don't just give lip service to hiring a diverse teacher and having diverse teachers and using that as a badge of honor, but really, really implementing change where our school district reflects and has a pulse on what their students are and represents them. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And yes, it's one piece. Hiring more diverse hires is just one piece of what we want to do and have been trying to do, but what we want to do more of going forward. But I appreciate your comments.
Nora?
Yes, Elise. Yeah.
Hi. I thinking of the children. I just want to know if there's been any sort of thought as to what happens after June 17th when school's over in terms of support, social emotional support, support for activism, support for thought in standing as allies, standing as friends, if there's any kind of plan to support children through the summer.
So Nora,
thank
if you don't mind, Nora, I can answer the wellness component, because to be honest with you, there are, well, let me answer that first, and I'll talk about some of the other focal points, and then I think the very important point that you just brought up. So wellness, yes, we talked about this actually again today, and even for the past few weeks. We think about all the services we provide our kids, whether it's food, right, for our kids, or whether it's services such as mental health. And then to pull the rug out after the 17th is, for lack of a better word, in my estimation, criminal. It's like, it's really, really, it hurts these kids and it hurts the families. So we're trying to think of ways to do that. And I'm going to say from a mental health standpoint first. So right now we're talking about a few ideas to have something in place. I can't get into the details right now, but we will have something, I believe, in place for our kids at all three levels, elementary, middle, and high school, if and when they need some support in some way. So that information should be coming out relatively soon. I haven't even shared it with the board yet, so I don't want to get ahead of myself either. Well, I already did, because I already talked about it, and now this is going to be out everywhere. But that's a good thing as far as what we're trying to do.
Don't
As far as,
tell anybody you said
yeah,
that.
yeah. Too late. Now, from an activism standpoint and everything else, no, we haven't really talked about that yet. Because truth be told, we are starting to focus on the issues that we're talking about right now, which is the hiring of the retirements, and a way to, again, we talked about looking at a more diverse, because I agree with Nora, there is diversity on our staff. We just need more of it to be reflective of the community we're serving, and how to go about that. At the same time, have the budget go out at the same time of graduation, at the same time of moving up, at the same time of the ending of school. So there's a confluence of events that are happening right now. Once those things are over, we can talk about, in some ways, supporting kids through the summer in some of the other ways that you just brought up. What are they right now? We don't really have much to share with you at this point. I know there are lots of wonderful organizations in our school community that can support our kids to possibly do that, for sure. Have some of our kids reached out to local authorities to see what they can do? Yeah, they have, and I applaud them for that, by the way. I think it's wonderful that they want to have a voice, and they want to connect, and they want to support what their thoughts and feelings are. But as a school district right now, that has been our priority up until this particular meeting right now.
I have a quick
Thank you.
question.
Hi, Jessica.
I was just wondering if there is any plan on having professional development for the teachers and staff regarding this issue of race, and how to teach from a different, a perspective of being more inclusive.
Yeah. So, Nora, I hope you don't mind me hogging these answers. That's a really great question. And yes, so when it comes to professional development, there will be a lot of different things that we focus on from now until, and not just until school begins, but throughout the school year. So as far as what you brought about, as far as whether it's race, whether it's from a cultural standpoint, yes, we will. There's no doubt about it. The question won't be, what are we going to bring in? It's how are we going to share it with our teachers? What are the mechanisms that will allow our teachers to have access to those professional development opportunities? And that's where our wonderful technology department comes in. That's where, if we do have staff developers coming in from the outside, we would have to certainly work those things through. But you have to understand too, Jessica, in the sense of, we have to figure out too what the model is, right? when kids come back and teachers come back, is it on a staggered schedule? Is it completely remote? So those are the things we have to take into consideration too. At this point, I'm going to be honest with you, not to get ahead of myself and to bring what September looks like. But if I had to guess right now, it's probably a hybrid between physically being here and then having some type of remote learning take place. And clearly, whatever from a professional development standpoint we bring in, it will mirror that as well. And I think with that, it'll work out very well. But this can't be like an inoculation. Like, it's not just like a one and done. We have somebody come in for a session and then they leave. That type of professional development really doesn't do much of anything. It needs to be systemic, it needs to be longitudinal, and there needs to be a real commitment and to have those relationships with the staff members so real change can take place.
And thanks, Beck. I just want to mention something. I just got a text, and I don't know if anybody else heard this, but I heard that Somerville, Massachusetts has declared racial bias as a public health concern, and New York is going to follow and do the same thing. I just wanted to mention if anybody saw that coming across on their, news feed. Okay, just to mention that. Sounds like a step in the right direction. Would anybody else like to comment before we move on to the next topic?
I have a question about curriculum change, if there's a place for it now. Dr. Hines mentioned a comprehensive change from K to 12 to address the systemic racism. What does the school district plan to do to change the curriculum or to add it or infuse more inclusive ideas for the kids?
Sure. So, and thank you for that question. Is that Maureen who asked that question? Thank you, Maureen. Well, first of all, there needs to be a process in place in order for us to do this, right? So, which means we need to have our teachers on board as far as part of what that would look like, certainly our administrators and the board, no pun intended, to be on board as far as what that actually looks like. And so in order for it to be systemic, and I would say we need to do two things, and it's going to take a little bit of time to do this, is to look at what we currently have and then to figure out if there are some things that we have to remove or, let's say, shed in some ways, and then if there are some things that we need to bring in and augment. Clearly, there are price points attached to that, but the most important thing is that the process is in place. We have the right people on board in help in assisting and making that happen, and to be open to all different ideas as far as what is out there. I don't believe in canned programs. I'm not a big fan of going to one shop, one-stop shopping and looking at something in particular, and they think they have all the answers for X, Y, and Z. I think what we will do, if I had a crystal ball in front of me, is to look at a whole bunch of different wonderful resources out there, and for us to pick and choose what we feel is most appropriate for our particular community, and then to move that moving forward. But we have to have all of the educators, when I say all the educators, I mean the different components of our educators, part of that process. And that's something we're very, very committed to doing.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. I just, yes.
Nora, if you don't mind, may I just add a comment about, hiring and diverse candidates and all of that? Everything Dr. Hines mentioned and Shirley mentioned, is definitely right on track. I think just to piggyback on that, it's not only important to recruit diverse candidates, whether it's ethnically diverse, culturally diverse, religiously diverse, but I think that one of the most important things we as a community and as a district can do is to make sure that diverse candidates feel a sense of belonging here. Many times people leave a job, not because they don't like the job, but they don't feel that they belong. And so helping people to have that strong sense of belonging and acceptance, I think, is critically important. And so I just, wanted to add that.
Thank you, Dr. Westerfeld. I can only see some people, but if anybody has
I have a quick question.
Speak, Kimberly. Yes, hi.
Thank you. So I was just wondering, and I put this in the chat as well, if at this point, if there is a concrete plan and timeline for making changes to the approaches to discipline and transitioning to restorative justice models. Is that just an idea at this point, or is there a concrete plan?
So Nora, if you don't mind, thanks, Kim. I hope all is well. I haven't seen you in a while.
Thank you.
So I will say I have a feeling. I don't want to speak on behalf of the board, but I have a feeling when we meet in reorg in July, this will be something that we talk about. As most of us probably know, the board and the superintendent set goals for the year. Clearly, we did that this previous July, and I know we will do that again. So before we start talking about timelines per se, I have a feeling some of the things that we're discussing here will fall into board goals, which then fall into superintendent goals, and then it'll trickle down to the rest of the organization. And from there, we could start talking about timelines and what that would mean as far as the code of conduct and such.
Can I just add something about that, Nora?
Sure.
So this is Emily, everybody, and I head the Policy and Personnel Committee, or I did this year. But we did discuss restorative justice in our December meetings this past year. So, and we had guests, Dr. Pernick, Javelin, and I believe Dave Miller came from the high school and discussed examples of restorative justice that they felt were in place at the high school and at the middle school. So before, I think what would be a great idea is if everybody would go back and listen to the podcast, because we do have the luxury this year of having everything been podcast, to go and listen and see if you can, hear what they say, and then let's take it from there, because I don't think it would serve us well to just try to reinvent the wheel again after we did have a very lengthy discussion about that in December.
Thank you, Emily. Shirley, did you want to say something? I couldn't tell if you.
I think Jessica Milwani wanted to speak. Jessica, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Hi, can you hear me?
Okay, hi, yes.
Hi.
Hi,
Yeah. So we've been talking, a lot about the curricular implications, integrating this into our children's educational experience. We've talked a little bit about, digging into the policies that sort of have critical outcomes where social justice is concerned. I'm wondering, sort of foundationally, has the district or the board given any thought to how we address implicit bias among all of our stakeholders, from the board and the administration through teachers, faculty, staff, and parents and families, whether there are any either resources or training that could be provided throughout the community so that when we do reimagine the policies and the environment that we're providing for our students, that we've surfaced all of the sort of implicit bias that we come to our everyday lives with. It's difficult work, but it strikes me as foundational to what we're doing now.
I would agree with that. I don't have an answer for you right now, but I do think looking at that is important, and implicit bias is something that we have to explore and work on, I believe. And I think that's probably true. I know it's true for everybody, and I think that is a very good suggestion. Mike, did you want to comment on that?
No, I mean, it's such an important point. And it's I agree. It is so foundational. I mean, we all have biases and assumptions about anything, right? Especially when it comes to, I think, race. And so, yeah, I agree that will be one of the most difficult, but yet most important things that we begin to tackle. I think some of it certainly comes from a professional development standpoint, whether we have, conferences for parents, but it can't just be in the school. I mean, so I will say that this cannot just be a K through 12, what we do in school matter. That has to be a community, I believe, because clearly our students, our children, come from homes. And so we need to make sure that has to happen both at the home and the school, and need to figure out a way to do that. But that's a really, really important point for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think microaggression and implicit bias are the, we speak about it, but we really have to do some deep thinking and deep action. I mean, this is really a time for action. Like we've done work on the diversity committee over the years, and we're proud of it. But this is a time when I think we all feel compelled, the need to do more. And that's, I think I speak on behalf of a lot of the board, if not the whole board, and a lot of all of us are feeling that way. I see it's almost 1 o'clock, and I just,
Oh, wow.
I just wanted to mention two things. One is what we have done during the COVID crisis for our students who are in need, this is some of them, many of them are diverse students, not all, but we have been providing laptops or Chromebooks. We've distributed well over 500 to families that did not have a device at all, and made sure either they had Wi-Fi or that the Chromebooks were embedded with 4G or 5G, I'm not sure. And likewise, we have been providing meals for families, for students rather, anybody under the age of, I believe it's 18 and under, who needs food. So we have 5 delivery drop-off spots, where it's actually pickup locations throughout the community, where people come. And we're up to, I think the average now is like 6,000 meals per week, which is people take, kids take for breakfast and lunch. And we're also providing weekend meals on Fridays. They take extra. And this was one of the first things we did when the building shut down, because kids on free and reduced lunch need to have continuity, need to have food. And likewise, doing distance learning when a large segment of our population doesn't have devices at home wasn't going to work. So that was a priority for us. Shirley, I think I cut you off though.
Right. There were a couple of things. I wanted to address what we're talking about now, which is, we have reached out in a significant way, especially, I'm going to speak about the ENL population, because as many of you may know, our Hispanic population was hit very hard by COVID, in Port Washington and in other communities on Long Island. And I really would like to give kudos not only to my staff, administrators, but also to our bilingual social workers at the high school, Adriana Najera, Jose Mejia, and Daniela Venegas, who are all native speakers of Spanish. Our guidance counselors, particularly Elias Gomez and Deborah Strell, who handle the ENL populations at the high school, who have really done yeoman's work of reaching out to students. We have had students that have had relatives pass away from COVID. We have students that have had relatives, parents hospitalized, intubated, and it's just been an overall, aside of the fact that they're teenagers, now they're dealing with isolation, with sick family members, with fear possibly of deportation because of what's going on in the United States today. And the guidance counselors and the social workers in particular have provided online groups. We have our own we make phone calls, our TAs make phone calls, I've made phone calls to families to find out what's going on. Why haven't you logged on? How is everything going? And once we find out that there is a crisis, and believe you me, there have been a lot of crises since this whole pandemic started with families in Port Washington, we immediately act to try to mitigate, listen, understand, recognize outside counseling. The social workers do try to do counseling online, obviously, in Google Meets. It's not easy, but we have definitely tried not only to support the academic and the physical needs through food, but we've also tried to support the socio-emotional and, in this case, psychological needs, because it's been very devastating to certain sections of the population. The other thing that I wanted to say with regard to the SEL, the social emotional, I'm running a life program over the summer. It's going to be done virtually. The acronym which I invented is Academic Literacy Intervention for ELS. I have about 17 of my teachers who are going to work, and the teachers will serve students in their own schools. They're going to do 1 hour per day live. So they will have 2 classes within that 1 hour. It is going to be all live, remote, obviously. But it's a way not only to keep the children engaged and interacting with adults and interacting with each other, but it's also a way for us to try to prevent that summer slide to a population that's very vulnerable. You know, this is a whole new environment that we're working in with regard to virtual everything. And it's been very difficult for everyone, students, parents, administrators, teachers, to cope. But we want to keep that feeling going over the summer with this population, as this is one of the most at-risk groups that we have. And we don't really know what September is going to look like yet. So we hope we're back, but we want to give additional support to these kids. Thank you. Nora, you have to unmute.
Okay, well, now I can say it. Thank you, Shirley, for sharing that. And I think you and your teachers and the rest of the staff are doing an amazing job. And that program sounds excellent. So thank you. Thank you. We have to leave in a few seconds, but I know that Mike is going to say one more thing, and then Elise May is going to mention a peaceful protest later this afternoon. Is that, or am I wrong? No? Okay, Mike, go ahead. I might have
No,
jumped.
Elise, you go first, and then I'll stop. Go ahead, please.
I might have made a mistake on that one.
Yeah, that's okay. The peaceful protest this afternoon is not happening this afternoon. So you will get further notice of the actions that Long Island Together is going to be taking. But I will say that there are a group of very energetic, focused teens. And that's why I asked about outreach through not just now, but through the summer, in terms of teens from Schreiber who really want to do something, and they themselves are putting something together that will happen.
Okay, great. And I apologize. I thought.
No, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mike, Dr. Hines.
Okay, so I'm gonna say something, and I don't want it to be political. So by saying it now, you're probably gonna think it's political. That's the bad part of saying it this way. But I'm speaking from the heart. So we all remember Sandy Hook, right? We remember what happened. Absolutely horrific. You can't think of a worst case scenario when it comes to that type of violence within school shootings, right? And I think most of us who lived through that time, and if you had your own children in school, you probably thought there is definitely going to be some type of change. The needle will be moved in some way. Regardless of what everybody's thoughts are about guns and everything else, we thought the needle may move, and it really didn't move that much. It didn't move that much, if at all. And I liken it only in the way of national attention. People are very emotional about this. But then 6 months from now, where will we be as a nation, right? As far as all these things that are happening that's in our purview, as far as us watching the news and being really connected to what's happening. But the question then becomes, does it go back to the way it was before? And I think as a school district, actually, I know this is a school district because this is really what's so wonderful about this board. This board, and I know that the educators here and you as parents and community members don't want to lose this opportunity to make these changes. And so when we come back in September, whatever it looks like in December, whatever it looks like next March, this needs to be a real priority for this school district, regardless of how it may be anywhere else. It has to be, and I really believe that is going to be the case. This is not just a diversity committee concern or issue. This is a community and school district concern and issue. And I don't know. I'm very thankful for you all being here this afternoon, even though it is raining. I really do appreciate that, and I know we're going to make some systemic changes moving forward. So I just wanted to share that with you, Nora. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. In fact, that's one of the analogies that I have made as well, that this, after the series of terrible school shootings and protest marches of big, magnitude, the movement is still there, but it certainly hasn't moved that needle. And this though can't be like that. I mean, this is something that we just have to stick with. I mean, I do think that the needle's going to move personally, I think the needle's going to move nationally, and it has to some extent, but we just cannot let this go here, regardless of, when the protests stop, if they do stop and when they stop. This is something that is very important to all of us, and we are going to move forward on it. I want to,
Nora,
yeah.
before you end, can I ask Elise a question with regards to the peaceful protests? How is the community finding out about them? I know that Long Island Together was spearheading, but are they working with the high school? I know that they are high school students. Are we helping as a school district to facilitate like we did back in unfortunate time of Parkland, where I think the school district helped the students organize? How are we letting the rest of the community know? I mean, I personally get the Long Island Together emails, but I don't know that everybody does. So what's the process?
Thank you.
Question for Elise. I hope she's still here.
Yeah, Elise is here.
Okay.
I can only speak for what has happened in the last few days. Several teenagers have reached out to LIT through Sonia Aurora, who unfortunately could not be on the call. We had initially had an idea for a march that would happen today, and their actions and desires are going into another direction that needed a little more time for planning. We want to support what they're doing, and we as LIT members regrouped today and are talking about other actions to support Black Lives Matter and other actions that we could take as a community. So I don't want to speak entirely for LIT, and you will be getting more information about this. I do know that today there is a march today or tomorrow, there's a march in Manhasset that will be happening. Maravik, I see you shaking your head. Is it today or tomorrow? Tomorrow. Thank you, I read lips. But that's why I was asking in terms of what kind of outreach and programming over the summer and social emotional learning can happen, because there is great need. Obviously, the pandemic has added another level of isolation that these teenagers are feeling, and the necessity for them to speak out and communicate with each other and have a sense of community is so important, and that's what cannot end after June 17th. It's got to be addressed, I think, with the district in mind, and I don't know if they're reaching out to the social workers within the district. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
The answer is we don't know. Yeah. So I think I think we should try, Nora, somehow to help with the process of getting these
Getting out the word.
students.
Yes.
Yeah, and at least helping our students.
Yes.
So I
No,
don't
I
know
thought
if
you meant
it
this.
means
Yeah.
it means the high school getting involved or whatnot, but I think that we should, if possible, try to figure out some more, because I do think it should get out to the community as something that we would be supporting.
Okay, we should talk about that. I agree. Okay, I think I have to end the meeting. We will be scheduling another one. We don't know yet, but when, but we will definitely let you know with a little bit more advance notice than this time. Thank you very much for coming and
Thank you all.
sharing, and we'll speak to you soon. If you haven't voted, please do so. In fact, if you haven't voted yet, but you have your absentee ballot, the best way to do it at this point is to drop it in the drop box outside the central administration office on Campus Drive, because the post office is slow and all ballots must be received by 5 o'clock on Tuesday, June 9th. So anyone who still hasn't voted, who intends to vote, the best way to do it would be to put the completed ballot in that drop box. Thanks again, and we will see you soon, and be safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Be well, everyone.